Hi everyone, my name is Sara Tarpley. I'm the Director of Academic Outreach and Engagement with Gale, and I've been with the organization for a number of years, and I've been to Charleston a number of years as well. And every year the room setup is a little bit different. So I'll beg your forgiveness for any technology hiccups that we have, because I do have video in today's presentation. So if it doesn't sound right, I apologize. And then secondarily, I am not a video editor, and so I have spliced up, I've done a homemade splicing of some longer videos, and so my edits are not as crisp as a type A personality such as myself would want. But hopefully this session really conveys to you some of what Gale is doing in terms of our content, our platform features, and the innovative support that we're driving to really drive and inspire leaders in teaching, learning, and research. So during this session, I wanted to just kind of start off and highlight some of the key features that we've been articulating on our Gale Primary Sources platform for a while now. There are quite a few fascinating things that I really love, and of course our customers have really driven and inspired us to create. So through partnership with instructors and with students, we've created a variety of key features that really help to aid in discovery. One feature is the manuscript browse. This is my absolute favorite because this is a great information literacy building skill where it matches the actual physical or the analog collection to a digital experience. And so it's great for a lot of different teaching points as it relates to finding materials and leveraging the organization of the original source collection. Other tools that we have, such as research tools, are integrated within the Gale Primary Source platforms. And these are sort of grouped. There are lots of avenues to pursue content and discoveries. One way you can do that is through, you can start off in a product like Archives of Sexuality and Gender. You can go into a cross search and find out other materials that kind of coalesce with your discovery around a particular topic that you might not have really understood or thought to experience. And you can do that with the Primary Sources cross search. The other research tool connection or connector is to the Digital Scholar Lab. So we have a direct pathway from the Gale Primary Sources platform into the Digital Scholar Lab where you can do closed text analysis and digital humanities products, therefore putting the lab directly in front of users who might not know of its availability elsewhere on campus. We also have fabulous learning centers that are really built for with students in mind, but we are finding that instructors and librarians are falling in love with these every single day because of the power that they bring in terms of articulating the bespoke nature of each one of our primary source collections to the end user in terms of identifying different capabilities of each primary source collection. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further to kind of further elaborate. We also have a fabulous related resources connection. I call this interlinking. The true name is related resources. But what interlinking is it really, within your search results, you can pull up a primary source document and then get contextual information to help you critically assess that document. So if you pull up a document, let's say from the National Council of, a letter, let's say, National Council of Negro Women. It's on National Council of Negro Women stationery. It's signed by Fannie Lou Hamer. It's addressed to Dorothy Height, etc. A student may have various questions about, well, what is this organization? I'm not familiar with it. So the ability to link to those secondary source ebook contents for contextual overviews helps people really discover the connections and connectivity of those resources. So we're really proud of the related resources experience that interlinks to that secondary content from the primary source. And then, of course, OCR enhancements. We have been publishing primary source collections since the very early 2000s. And we've got some members of our audience that had a crucial hand in some of that as well. And we've made a lot of great advancements in terms of our optical character recognition. We expose it for all of our documents, first and foremost. And then also, and that also helps with accessibility as well, making it a great assistive tool for screen readers and so on and so forth. So it does make the visual primary source images more accessible to persons of all abilities. Additionally, we have spent a large amount of time this year remediating some of the optical character recognition in some of our very, very early products like 18th Century Collections Online and Times Digital Archive. So you can imagine the advancements in OCR technology that have transpired since we originally digitized Echo and Times Digital Archive. So we've really spent a lot of time remediating that, and our plan is to continue on that same path and make the content more useful through better technology, and so that more unique discoveries can be made. So I mentioned the learning centers a little bit earlier here. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's kind of small. I need my readers at this point. But essentially, the learning centers exist in every single primary source collection that we publish. And if we publish a new collection, it usually will arrive, the learning center will usually arrive 2 to 4 months after its creation. The learning centers are a great instructional vehicle, and they really are tailored towards both the needs of students and faculty. They are built on the ACRL framework for primary sources, and it includes these 4 sections that you see here: conceptualizing your research question, finding primary source documents, reading, understanding, and evaluating, and using and incorporating the materials in your research. A few of the sections that I really think are fabulous are things like under conceptualize. What you can find under the sample topics and searches section under the conceptualize header are really vehicles to introduce students to discoveries that they can make with particular archives. Each learning center, like I said, is bespoke to the collection. So the one I'm showing here is from our decolonization archive, and you can see here that it's talking about different topics and presenting the students and instructors with different research questions that are relevant across multiple regions for which decolonization covers, and gives them a launch point in terms of locating materials in the archive itself. The other area that I think is very important as we look at voices from the past is the section under Find, titled Language and Terminology. And this is going to come up again when I share with you some information on a new collection that we're publishing called Disabilities and Society. What's important here is we want to make sure that students have an understanding that language of the period that was used in many of the collections that we publish is definitely not acceptable today, right? And to be able to search and retrieve and to find information, you might have to search under, in this case, different country names, as country names have changed through history, or you might have to search on specific terms. And so we explain that and we present that information in a really kind of tangible way for the end user. We also have under the read section some research examples as well. And this really kind of helps to showcase some of the key documents found, in this case, the decolonization archive, introducing students to the key questions they can use to interrogate primary sources. Everything within these sections is hyperlinked and clickable into the materials. So every time we're like sort of mentioning a search strategy or a research topic or a collection, it takes the student directly to those relevant documents that we're mentioning. So I mentioned also early on the manuscript browse, and I just wanted to highlight this because this truly is one of my favorite features, and librarians really do appreciate this as they're teaching information literacy to help students make those connections between physical collections and the digital experiences. So I'm going to hit go here, and I'm going to walk through and narrate this for you. So under collections and archives of sexuality and gender, you have all these different collections that comprise the archive. This is African Women's Life History Project. This is sourced from the Gay and Lesbian Memory in Action. You get a collection overview, and then down below you have organized for you the various manuscript boxes, or the exact chronological order of how this material was organized by the source institution. You can browse that, or you could search it for a term like Uganda, and it will pull back the manuscript file that has that material on Uganda. You also can browse all of the documents in this collection. And what's nice about this feature is that as you dive into this manuscript set of result, you can resort the results, and you can sort them by manuscript order here. So that's a wonderful way of like preserving and showcasing the completeness and the integrity of Gale collections and what we set out to digitize. And then further onto that, under the research tools area, which I mentioned previously, you'll see the finding aids. So you have the original finding aids where you can get that background detail about, how Gale created this, how they organized it, how the content arrived at their organization, and the exact representation of it. So you can combine these in a learning experience for students. And if you're a serious researcher and you're familiar with this content at the source institution, you can replicate those same searches by searching by manuscript number, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really great way to kind of showcase Gale's commitment to really digitizing collections as completely as we can. So barring any, credit card numbers, personal details, et cetera, we really do aim to work with our source institutions to really kind of arrive at complete experiences so that our users can make the discoveries and connections that they need. So there's nothing like kind of walking through an archive and getting really interested and into the material, and then all of a sudden there should be a next page, but for whatever reason, that vendor didn't digitize it. We really, really take with high regard the fact that we try to digitize everything from a source partner and to make collections as complete as possible. This is where I start to get like a very dry mouth and blah, 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 blah. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the new content that we're publishing in the 2023-2024 publishing year. So we publish on a 2023 to 2024 schedule, April through March. Is that right? Am I making? Yes, I've got my calendar right. Okay, April through March, yes. So this is a collection that I'll introduce you to. It's coming out in March. This is Disabilities in Society, 17th to 20th Century. And this is a really interesting collection because it demonstrates how society has presented and treated individuals with disabilities historically. And the great thing about this collection is that it also includes the voice of the disabled, right? So it includes personal memoirs of experiences of people with disabilities and or the physicians who treated them. There is going to be information on classification and treatment, and materials are going to be yielded from organizations involved in health and healing, policies and program law, labor laws, legal rights, and disability as a form of institutional discrimination. And you can kind of work to see how that's evolved through time, given the time period and length that this archive covers. So to touch on this, and this is where my sound gets a little bit tricky, I do apologize in advance. So to touch on this, what I want to set up here is, remember when I showed you the completeness and the ability to kind of do that manuscript browse and to sort the collection in its original kind of order, etc. Well, what I want to showcase here is just a little bit of a snippet of a video from Arlene Shaner. She's going to speak, she's the historical collections librarian at New York Academy of Medicine, and she's going to kind of speak to the Gale Partnership and kind of what we bring to the table in terms of the treatment of the collections that we're digitizing for this new Disabilities in Society archive. And I think she says it very clearly in terms of the importance of the collection and just kind of everything needed to take great care of this material. So let's test this out and wish me luck.
That is correct, and we have been working on this project now for already about a year and a half, and the idea for this project was earlier than that. And then of course we have to add into that the fact that when we got started working on this, we were still in the middle of that.
She doesn't normally speak that fast.
But of course, the real thing about doing these projects with Gale is how much work they do on their side for materials that maybe we don't have online records for, where they're creating a huge amount of documentation using our documentation that can provide us with much more in the way of using records at the end. The other thing is that everybody, I think now, is very much aware that there is a lot of content out there that's digitized content that's available through many different portals, but all of us have had the experience of turning a page in a source and discovering that the next page in that image was really a foldout with something wonderful on it, but that when that very quick digitization took place through whatever form it was being digitized, they just skipped right over that because sometimes those foldouts are fragile, because sometimes people weren't thinking about that. And the great thing about working with Gale is that we document every instance where there is an insert or holdout or anything else, and then when we work with our partner for digitization, all of that material ends up in the final product. So you have really, really complete versions of things that have not always shown up in the online resource in their complete form. And that's always added wonderful context.
Yeah.
Right. And the next point that
That is great.
stop. Okay. So just one more little snippet from Arlene here. I think the sound might get better on my next video. Cross fingers. But anyway, I want to kind of mention this, set up the second snippet from Arlene. Because one thing that we take very seriously, as you saw through that language and terminology section in our Learning Center, is providing content advisories and really kind of stepping an end user through, you know, the types of representation that they might see in some of the materials that we digitize, right? They are for academic research purposes. But when you are looking at disabilities and how they have been portrayed through history, there's obviously some language that is going to be disconcerting to the majority of the population today. So we're going to just talk through this, and what Arlene kind of walks us through is going to be documented in this product's Learning Center, right? The sensitivities as it relates to kind of like, you know, you might have to search for these, you know, somewhat derogatory terms, because at the time in history, that's kind of what it was.
The other side of this is that, well, there are a couple of different challenges with these claims. First, the language that has been used over time to describe some of these disabilities is very sensitive. It is not respectful of people. It is language that we often just recoil from now to call someone, to say that people are imbeciles or morons or any number of other terms that were used. These terms were not necessarily meant to be seen as disrespectful. They were, it's language that was in common use. And it shifts over time, and all of us who work now in the library and archives community are acutely sensitive to the fact that this language keeps changing and that there are moments when we wish that it looked different from the way that it looks. But there are also issues, and I think that one of the things that this collection of materials will start to bring forward, most trouble in a collection like this, is published material where the people who are creating the material are not the people who are the affected populations, right? So you have a medical establishment that is imposing its own views about whether it's deafness or blindness or mental illness or any number of other kinds of disabilities. They have their own perspective about how people have treated people, how people should live, what those disabilities are about. But one of the things that we are hoping to bring forward in this collection is the voices of people themselves. So sometimes people write personal memoirs of their own experience, and then you start to learn more from a very different perspective. Sometimes people they're publishing their own little documents about a place where they're living, or sometimes people create their own organizations or institutions that are for other people who have a common background. And then as we move forward, we also start to see shifts where there is a shift to saying, well, you know, we want to do all kinds of other things. We want to go traveling. So you see guidebooks and say, okay, you are traveling. These are things. These are places you can go. These are sometimes the names of accessible hotels or restaurants or other things like that. Guides or how to travel by train, for example, is mentioned. Well, exactly like Rainbow. See these shifts and say, we can take control of this area ourselves. We can do things, and people need to acknowledge that you know, we have a right to do this. So you can start to see shifts. So changes, and of course, you see shifts in the way in which the naming conventions change as well. And you start to see other kinds of voices that come forward in the collection.
So anyway, I guess with that segment, I really wanted to just kind of let you know that Gale is committed still to, you know, presenting the content advisories, the language and terminology sections in our Learning Center, but more importantly, giving voice to the underrepresented through some of the materials and the personal memoirs of individuals and their experiences in this collection. Oh boy.
So what's the other side of this?
Not again. All right. Moving on and shifting slightly, although there are social movements dedicated to rights of the disabled that will be covered in this collection. But the next archive collection releasing in this publishing year that I wanted to bring to your attention is a supremely colorful and visual one. And this one is entitled Power to the People, Countercultural Social Movements and the Alternative Press, 19th to 21st Century. And this is going to have all sorts of wonderful materials: posters, pamphlets, magazines, broadsides, leaflets, newsletters, newspapers, and of course, alternative press. Within this collection, we are digitizing from multiple source institutions that you see here. I'm going to put on a little video snippet of Bob Cooney, where he'll describe what you can find in his Pacific Coast Counterculture collection. He sort of is he's not sort of, he is an activist and he is an author, and made great connection with Gale early on, and was sort of the impetus behind us creating the Power to the People archive. But you can see that we have varied perspectives here. We have the University of Bradford's pamphlets and ephemera from the special collections on peace, politics, and social change, materials from Senate House Library, pamphlets on left-wing politics and radical political movements, a very cool, small collection from the University of Michigan titled The Liberal Students of the 1960s Collection, and Dennis Publishing. We're going to have some alternative presses covered in here as well. So we will have the 40 Times Bazaar in Viz from Dennis Publishing. This is 100% new digitization. It's full color. Geographic coverage is obviously mainly US and the UK, but there is focus and topical coverage on events around the globe. So let's talk a little bit about this collection. I'm going to have Robert P.J. Cooney Jr. Walk you through a little bit about what you can find in his collection, the Pacific Coast Counterculture Collection, and what kind of discoveries you can make with the materials held within his collection. So I hope this doesn't blare, because I think there might be a slight difference in terms of the volumes between Arlene and Bob here, so let's just hope.
I think people can learn a whole lot without being knowing what they're going to learn, because if you're interested in the Black Panthers, here's material produced by the Black Panthers. You know, this is not somebody else talking about them, this is them. And it's true with a lot of groups. I have magazines they put out in their newspapers, the first newspaper that Greenpeace put out, for instance, the Mother Earth News when I first came out. You know, these were seminal influences, and Mother Earth News just celebrated its 50th anniversary. So a lot of these have really continued on and made an impact on America and American history. Then we look at Black Lives Matter, well, technically about the Black Panthers, and the Black Panthers came out earlier material. So the movements really keep going and are regenerated. And it's important, I think, for us to know that there's a history behind it and there's momentum. You know, this didn't come from nowhere. We're building on something that already was happening, and it gives us a more of a strength, I would say, that we have a purpose. You know, there's a clear focus of what's going on here, and it's going to make a difference. You know, and we can worry and fret and all, but you just have to put your energy into it and try to do everything you can within the limits we have.
Yeah, so I think what he's trying to articulate is that basically a lot of these social movements of the past really are vehicles for kind of some of the, for the challenges that we're facing as a society today. So the discoveries that researchers and students can make with this past history and previous social movements that might inspire new activism and new angles of activism today is really kind of a highlight of the collection. I gotta get better at that. All right. One last collection that I'll spotlight, because I only have 20 minutes, and so one last collection that I'll spotlight before kind of giving a summary of some of the other archives that we're publishing in this year is the environmental history, conservation, and public policy in America. So, never before has this been of importance than today, given that we are finding ourselves sort of at the precipice of a global climate emergency. So we know that research is transpiring in this area. It is quite interdisciplinary. And this archive really kind of seeks to deepen our understanding of environmental issues and how human action has affected climate, wildlife, plants, marine life habitats across the globe. So this is a collection that is going to document the emergence of conservation movements and the rise of environmental public policy in North America. This is going to be the first archive in a series of archives that are going to focus on the environment and conservation efforts. So when we look at this, it's going to comprise 10 different collections. It is going to provide government documents, personal papers, publications, ephemera. It particularly concentrates on the role of various government agencies and conservation organizations and individual campaigners who pioneered the study of the natural environment and really campaign for its protection. Here you can see a sampling of the collections included. I didn't capture them all. You can also see a listing of our source institutions. A lot of the collections come from Denver Public Library. They are renowned for their environmental collections, and so we're so grateful that they've chosen to partner with us. And the topics that you can find are quite interdisciplinary. anything from American history to environmental studies, environmental science, technology, medicine, and also anthropology and so on and so forth. So a lot of great information can be held here. And as we look at sort of the critical discoveries an archive like environmental history can surface, I harken back to an article that was published in the LA Times about 5 weeks ago. They published a lengthy article about removing dams along the Klamath River, which is located between California and Oregon. So 4 hydroelectric dams were built between 1912 and the 1960s, and these were really built without the consent of the Yurok people, and the dams were used for power generation. Not to store water for cities or the dams. The Klamath dams blocked salmon from reaching their spawning areas. They degraded the quality of the river. There were toxic algae blooms after the dams were installed, disease outbreaks among fish, and according to the Yurok tribe's fisheries director, populations of salmon and other fish declined more than 90%. Many people believe that the dams have been a big factor. So this article doesn't only mention the impact to fish populations from the river dams, but more importantly, the author of the article, Ian James, really does present the Yurok people's point of view and the impact that the dams and the subsequent environmental changes have had on their culture. It took decades of advocacy by the Yurok for action to be taken into consideration to affect change and to remove the dams. It's fascinating, and I think the one heartbreaking point of the article is this bottom bullet here. Pacific Corp, part of Berkshire Hathaway, agreed to remove the aging dams after determining it would be less expensive than trying to bring them up to current environmental standards. So they're not even doing this out of respect for the Yurok culture and the tribe. They are simply doing this because it is cheaper to demolish them. So in Denver Public Library's United States Bureau of Land Management records held within this archive, you can view details on the Bureau's work of 18 projects in 9 Western states. And this collection actually has 14 folders of documents, not 14 documents, 14 folders of documents related to the Klamath Project from 1903 to 1925. And when I took to examining this material, I want you to kind of understand here that it's very probably hard to read, but this document is mentioning that when they excavated for the south abutment wall and the core trench under the south embankment, 15 feet, just 15 feet below ground level, Indian arrow and spearheads were found in the sand. There's no note about an archaeological team excavating and documenting these artifacts. So where I'm going with this is that you're not going to be able to search this environmental history resource for the term environmental racist or racism. It is not going to be as explicit as that. But you can uncover and you can discover these connections to understand what went wrong in the past in terms of how we treated cultures and people. And you can see as I walk through the examination in chronological order of these documents, right? This is a 1915 report. It mentions that the Bureau was cooperating with the Agricultural Department, the Geological Survey, the Weather Bureau, and the Indian Department for this project. But was the Indian Department involving the tribal community directly? We're definitely not finding much of a mention of that, really any mention of the Yurok people. And then finally, once I reach documentation from 1918, I find a mention of the Klamath Indian Reservation, and this document mentions that the Indian Department irrigates lands on the reservation, and the reservation's water supply is derived from some of the streams furnishing water for the Klamath Project. So now maybe I'm being unreasonable. Maybe it's to be expected that the Klamath Project reports and histories from the Bureau wouldn't include documentation on the work's impact of life and the fish and the population and the health of the river. Or maybe in the absence of those notes, we see what was and perhaps what was not important during the establishment of the Klamath Project. So these are the discoveries and the connections that individuals can make with something like our Environmental History Archive. I will say that 20 minutes will not allow me to encapsulate every single archive that we are publishing, but we have a fascinating schedule this year. I did cover 3 archives, but I did not have time to cover all of these in orange. I did want to make mention that we are looking at environmental history through a global lens, and the colonial policy and global development will give insight into enviro-colonial issues and provide a more global viewpoint where you'll find coverage of Africa and India and so on and so forth. We're also publishing fascinating things as it relates to state papers on colonial Asia, our refugees, relief and resettlement, and of course a fascinating Making of Modern Law collection focused on the United States Courts of Appeals. And finally, if you are not familiar with Gale Research Complete, this is a resource that provides the largest package of primary and secondary sources on the market today, supporting both research and instruction. And within this resource, you are going to gain access to all of Gale's proprietary databases, all of our proprietary ebook publishing, and over 400 Archives Unbound primary source collections. And we're excited to announce that in December, we're releasing a Gale Research Complete cross-search experience that's inspired by instructors and students. And this cross-search will allow users to simultaneously search all the resources in the Gale Research Complete package so that your search results for the very first time, when applicable, will include topic and work portals, literature criticism, business profiles, market research, primary sources, and so much more. So it's a well-encapsulating search that's really going to drive a lot of great instructional and research opportunities. So with so many exciting new enhancements, new content, and different tools being developed all of the time, how can you and your library stay up to speed on all things Gale? How can we help you implement new and previous acquisitions? Well, Gale has a dedicated academic outreach and engagement services team, of which I'm the director of, and we offer a bevy of services that you can see here. Things like content query assistance. We work with library liaisons and generalists all the time to assist them with locating content that they need to teach an instructional course. We do LibGuide creation, faculty area research correlations, course course training, both asynchronous and live training. So definitely, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach me and my team at gale.academicoutreach@cengage.com, or you can view some of our output on support.gale.com or galelibguides.com. And feel free to reach out. I mean, we have testimonials, so
Sorry,
if you're...
We're about 15 minutes
Yeah.
over. To know, can we
Oh, sure,
give
yeah.
the contact
So feel
information?
free to reach out or join us at one of our upcoming webinar series. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for your time.